So the year was 1738, and a young Yoruba boy was kidnapped from his home in Western Africa, forced to endure a 2 to 3 months journey across the Middle Passage to end up in colonial America. Through the years, he would be bought and sold several times from French Louisiana to North Carolina, having to endure some of the most unimaginable things. But this young man was different. Everywhere he went, people saw that he was different. The confidence that he walked with, his level of intelligence, a lot of people thought he was of noble lineage because of how he was able to carry himself. Over the years, he would learn how to speak and write in multiple languages. And even in a situation that was meant to suppress him and quiet him, he would always be someone that people would listen to and follow and look up to. When the American Revolution broke out, the British Empire began trying to recruit enslaved Africans to fight with them against the Americans. And so this young man had heard about this, and so he decided to enlist. But in doing so, he also recruited hundreds of colleagues with him to join this, to fight with the British. And this group of soldiers would become known as the Black Loyalists. And this young man would become a sergeant within the regiment. The British, I don't think I mentioned, they were offering the freedom papers and free land in a new colony if the enslaved would fight with them against the Americans. And so after the war, the British kept part of their promises, and they shipped the Black Loyalists off to Nova Scotia with the promises of freedom and prosperity. But when they arrived, it didn't quite match the reality. They didn't get the land that they were promised. The little bits of land that they received was infertile, it was rocky, you couldn't grow anything on it. They didn't get the support that they needed. So they ended up building small towns on the outskirts of where the white loyalists were settling in Nova Scotia. And because they didn't have the means to take care of themselves, they would end up working as day laborers, sharecroppers, or as indentured workers to the white loyalists. But this individual didn't accept this reality. He decided to get on a ship and sail to England and face the British government and demand that they deliver on their promises. And while he was in London, he came across an anti-racism organization that was looking to start a new colony in Western Africa. And so this individual went back to Nova Scotia and convinced thousands of black settlers to then pack up to the new unknown of Sierra Leone. And in 1792, 15 ships left the Halifax harbor and set sail to establish Freetown, which is now the capital of Sierra Leone. This man is remembered by the name of Thomas Peters, and I happen to be one of his descendants. And you know, like Peters, newcomers today face a lot of unknowns with nothing really guaranteed. It takes immense amount of strength to leave behind what you know, what is familiar to you, to navigate new systems, new languages, a lot of uncertainty. But it's in this unknown where courage is formed. As newcomers, you carry a lot of the qualities of Thomas Peters: resiliency, adaptability, leadership. And these are the qualities that allowed him to thrive against all odds. So today I want to take a look at the story of Thomas Peters and extract some life lessons that I think will apply to all of you in this room. So I have 5 lessons I want you to walk away with from this story. Okay? Why don't you read them out loud with me, all right? The first one is courage over comfort. Number 2, stay open. Number 3, master failure, master success. Number 4, communication drives impact. And number 5, community is the catalyst. That's right. All right, so lesson number 1, Courage over comfort. Starting over is not easy, right? We can all agree on that? Yeah, 100%. But starting over when your path is laid with so many unknowns, it makes it so much more challenging. When Thomas decided to join the British Army, it was a gamble, right? Does he side with the devil that you know or the devil that you don't know, right? By this time, he has already spent so many years in America and has gotten used to it. He understands how it works. Siding with the British is opening up a whole bunch of unknowns. This promise of new land in this new colony, can he trust them? He doesn't know. And as the British started recruiting enslaved Africans, the Americans started doing so as well, promising freedom and their papers. So there was a lot of debate on where should we go? What is the best path towards a better life for us? And so sometimes in hindsight, we can think the answers were so clear and obvious. But when you're in the middle of it, it is hard to make these types of choices. Right? Can he trust the British? Right? It wasn't an obvious choice. It's not like one side had their hands clean in the matter. Both sides played a role in his current condition and the hardship that he was dealing with. Could he trust the promises of freedom and land? And even once he decided to join the army, it required him to escape his current captivity. And that in and of itself is a feat that would deter a lot of people. But then to go to escape, just to turn around and to fight in a war with people you don't know, people you can't trust, with just the hope that it might lead to a better life. When you reflect on your own journey of leaving your home, maybe you left family behind, friends, culture, a place of familiarity. Maybe it's a place where everyone was just like you, right? They dressed like you, ate the things you ate, and you left that in hopes of a better life. For some of you, just getting here was a feat. A few months ago, I was speaking to an individual, and they were telling me how they came here to Canada by foot. Him, his young child, about 5 years old, and a pregnant wife walked here on foot from Brazil. That's not a big enough reaction. I was shocked when I heard that. Originally from Haiti, managed to make their way to Brazil, and over 4 months crossed several borders to get here. They were robbed multiple times, death all around them, illness, they barely slept or ate. But they made it. And within a few weeks, the wife gave birth to the baby here. So even if your situation might not be that traumatic, right? Maybe it is, but whatever your story is, the mere idea of packing everything up, your whole life, and stepping into the unknown is hard. Stepping into a new culture, maybe some of you a new language. I'm sure you're stepping into a new climate. We had to shift this whole event because of the climates around here, right? Even if your situation is bleak, like Thomas, staying put wasn't a great option. But even then, don't undervalue the level of courage that is still required to step out and follow through on something like this. Right? Because Thomas, there was thousands of enslaved people facing the same types of conditions who could have made the decisions that Thomas made, but they didn't. Right? Maybe there were thousands of people in your type of position people could have left with you. They could have made the decisions that you made, but they didn't. Whatever your reasons were, for you to be here is no small feat. I know often we have such busy lives that we don't stop to reflect on the journey too much. So I want you to take a moment and to sit with that. Think about who you are. Think about what you are made of. You are courageous. So let me ask you, as a courageous person, what can an unstable job market possibly do to you that you cannot handle? What can economic uncertainty do to you? What can political unrest do to you that you cannot face head on like the courageous person that you are, that you have already proven yourself to be. So moving to a new country, it's a leap of faith, but like Peter's, you're stepping in to an unknown. It's about having the courage to leave behind what is familiar with the belief that it will lead to something greater. The second lesson is stay open. It's natural for us to dream about what life will be like when, right? What my life will be like when I finish school. Everything's going to be better when I find that right person. Then my life's going to fall into place. When I finally get that job, everything will start figuring itself out. When I move to Canada, everything will be better. Right? That resonates. It's often that after you work so hard to achieve a goal, a hard goal, people often fall into pits of despair. You're coming off the high of doing something really hard to be hit with the reality that didn't quite match up with what you had dreamed it was going to be. I studied really hard and I got the good grades, but I didn't get the job. I moved to the land of prosperity. It took everything I had to get here. But now my bank account's still not prospering. This can lead people to periods of grief and despair. Right? After the adrenaline wears off of the move or the new job, you get hit with the reality of what it's really like, how things are panning out for you. And it can be easy to fall into despair and hopelessness. And you start questioning, did I make the right decision? I put in all of this effort. I thought it was going to be amazing, and now it's not. After the war, when Thomas Peters made his way to Nova Scotia, it wasn't a welcomed reception. He had his freedom now, but it was a new hostile environment. He didn't get the land he was promised. He didn't get the resources and the support that they needed that the white loyalists were receiving at the time. And so they ended up working for the white loyalists to help them build their dreams, to help them build their new life. And they were left just trying to pick up the scraps to do what they can. Over the years, I developed a mantra, and it's simple. It's just these words: stay open. So when you're confronted with a difficult conversation, stay open. When new challenges emerge, stay open. When you're paralyzed with fear, stay open. You see, when we're overwhelmed with discomfort, with hardship, when we feel threatened, we tend to close up, right? We stop listening well. We're less creative. We're more prone to bias. We take less chances. We fall back on what's familiar, what's comfortable to us. But growth happens when we stay open. Connection happens when we stay open. Innovation happens when we stay open. Open to new ideas, open to new people, open to new conversations, open to new journeys. You know, there was a lot of Black folks who left Canada to go back to the US at this time because they found the conditions here to be worse than they were there. And so they wanted to go back to what was familiar. But Thomas stayed open to a different idea. Instead of going back, he tapped into that courage that he had summoned before. That courage to rally 1,000 enslaved people to fight in the war with the British. That courage to step into a new colony in Canada. He summoned it again when he went across to England to fight for his community. Are you open to new opportunities? Or have the setbacks of life slowly begun to close you down? Have feelings of hope been replaced with pessimism? What visions of the future have slowly been replaced with constant thoughts of the past and what you should have done and how you could have done this and regrets that you beat yourself up about? The path we envision for ourselves is not often panning out in real life. But when we stay open, when we stay open to the unknowns, when we stay open through the hardships, we might not find ourselves on the path that we dreamed of, but we'll find ourselves on the path that we're destined for. Openness is a risk that's worth taking. So stay open to new people, new opportunities, new ways of thinking, and create unexpected paths in your life. Lesson number 3. Master failure, master success. Friction is a part of the journey. You know, you think about like Michael Jordan and Wayne Gretzky, Serena Williams, Thomas Edison, Oprah Winfrey, Steve Jobs. These are all people that are legends in their respective fields. People who have impressive records and big accomplishments. But they're also people who have the biggest failures, the biggest setbacks, lost shots, missed games, rejected ideas, public scrutiny. Right? Michael Jordan's missed over 9,000 shots in his career, lost 300 games, and he's considered the greatest of all time. Or maybe top 2, depending on who you ask these days. Thomas Edison failed thousands of times before he finally ended up on the light bulb. Oprah was told she was unfit for the television. Right? Success isn't the absence of failure. It's not the absence of rejection. It builds on top. You're learning from the rejection. You embrace the failure as a stepping stone to help you grow. Mastery is not about avoiding the failure. It's about standing up every time it knocks you down. When I think about Thomas's story, like none of it makes any sense to me. Like here you were enslaved for most of your life, subjected to some of the most brutal conditions and treatment in our recorded history, and yet you still had the drive. You still had the courage. You still had the wherewithal, the influence to escape being enslaved and enlist with the very group that captured you in the first place. Not only that, but he managed to convince thousands of people to do the same thing. And then when he saw he got played in Nova Scotia, he traveled across the ocean to get some face time with the very government of the nation that kidnapped him and demanded justice. Like, what? This doesn't make any sense to me. But too often, we let our circumstances define us. We let the conditions around us define us. We let our failures and our setbacks define us. But like Thomas, your value is not defined by your circumstance. Rejection, whether it is job applications or in housing or in social settings, is inevitable. What matters is how you respond to it. You will get knocked down, but are you ready to keep getting back up? Lesson number 4. Communication drives impact. So I'm always amazed at how Thomas kept on convincing people to do things. And we're not talking like 1 or 2 people, like thousands of people he was convincing to do things and to move with him. And these weren't easy things. These were hard things. These were scary things. And I can't stop but think about the power of effective communication. I think it's one of the top skills that all of us need to continually be working on year after year. How can I be more effective at sharing my ideas? How do we be more effective in telling our stories, in getting our voices heard? No matter what business you're in or where you find yourself in life, whether effective communication, whether it's verbal or written, or your tone or the image that you're projecting, being able to get ideas from inside of your head into someone else's in the way that you intended will always be a deciding factor in how impactful you are. It does not matter how good your ideas are. It doesn't matter how educated you are if you are unable to communicate these things effectively. Now, true communication begins with listening, understanding who you're speaking to understand their perspective before you say something. Great communicators know that listening isn't a passive skill, it's an active activity that is used to help forge connection and build trust and maintain meaningful engagement. Great communicators listen first to create clarity and empathy and relevance in their interactions, turning the communication into a genuine two-way process. The better I understand who I'm speaking to, the better I can craft my message for them. So if I'm going in for an interview, the more I understand the pain points of the company or of the CEO or whoever is interviewing me, and I understand what they're thinking about, what they're worried about, how they view things, the better I can shape the conversation to resonate with them. Now, I'll touch on the elephant in the room. As newcomers, there may be a number of you whose English is not the first language, or French is not your first language. Or maybe you have an accent, a strong accent. You might be self-conscious about that accent. And if we're being honest, in our society, not all accents are created equal, right? And an idea from this accent sounds very credible. The same idea from that accent sounds a little questionable. Right? And these are legitimate barriers that you might face in your day-to-day interactions. But first I'll say, when you're communicating, even in your mother tongue, most of us are still not strong communicators and don't put in the intentional time and effort it takes to really enhance those skills. And the other thing, when it comes to accent, it's often not the accent that's the problem, but more of a focus on articulation and pronunciation. So making sure you're not slurring your words together, you're pronouncing all the syllables. There's a popular YouTube communication coach named Vin Yang. I suggest looking him up. He's got good stuff. And he talks about this exercise where he says 5 minutes a day, you get a book, any book, you get your camera out and film yourself reading that book out loud. And he says, overemphasize every word you are saying and take the time to enunciate. And it sounds awkward, it feels awkward, but as you do it, it builds the muscle memory of your mouth, of your tongue, and it helps you to practice speaking more clearly. Signing up for Toastmasters, for drama classes, acting classes, vocal coaches, these are all great ways to practice tuning your vocal instrument. Again, this is a skill that you should never stop working on. So if you are someone who feels like you get talked over a lot, nobody seems to listen to your ideas, right? Before you go and think, I need to go get another degree because if I have more letters behind my name, then people will respect me. Then people will listen to me. Before you go and think, once I get that promotion and I get the title, then everyone's going to pay me attention. Everyone has to listen to me once I'm the manager. It's not true, right? Instead, focus, hone in on your communication skills, right? This is the most powerful thing that you can control. I can't control everybody else, right? Because if we're being honest, you will face some barriers, right? Whether it's racism or sexism, other forms of discrimination, you will probably face some discrimination. But how you communicate is something you can control, and it's something that can cut through even the toughest barriers. Lastly, the last lesson I want to take away from Thomas' story is that community is the catalyst. So it's the catalyst for change, a catalyst for personal development, a catalyst for endurance, success, and our well-being. In the Western world, we tend to romanticize the lone wolf, right? The individual hero who took matters into their own hands, and we individualize success. But while Thomas is the name that has been remembered throughout history, he was never alone. He had people come with him to join the army. He had people come with him to Nova Scotia. He had people come with him to England. He had people come with him to Sierra Leone. Community is essential for our success. You have the courage. You all have the skills. You all have the grit That's why you're here. But do you have the community around you to support you and to sustain you? As someone who maybe packed up their life to start all over again by yourself, you might deceive yourself into thinking that you are all that you need, that you have it all, that you are strong, that you are independent, that you can do it on your own. But you see, disconnection makes us vulnerable. When we're disconnected, we're more susceptible to social, emotional, and mental instability. And this vulnerability weakens us and our ability to navigate challenging times and hardship. When you moved and pack up your life and start all over again, that loss of community can be devastating. And we know that community plays a crucial role in the successful integration of newcomers, right? And studies show that it has linked to improved health outcomes, like things like lower depression rates. But we also know that there's a lot of barriers, whether it's cultural or social barriers for newcomers in accessing these types of social support. But the good news is that it doesn't take a huge network. It doesn't require a large group of friends in order for us to experience the benefits of community. It only takes a couple of people. So when you think about success and you think about building your life, I don't want you just to think in terms of your job. Don't just think in terms of money and in your house, but think in terms of community as well. Be intentional. Be as intentional with investing in your community and in your networks as you have been with your education and in your careers. Things like faith institutions, groups like this, right? Meetup groups, sports clubs. These are all ways for us to be intentional in building community and reaching out, connecting with people. Be intentional with building the community in your life, and connection is essential for our well-being, our success, and our resilience. You know, building meaningful connections doesn't mean that you have to know everybody, right? But it's about finding your people. Who can support you? Who inspires you? Who helps you out when you're feeling low? You know, despite the odds, Peters didn't just survive, but he laid a foundation that echoed, that shaped communities across continents, impacting millions of lives over the generation. And I can imagine that as a kid, he probably did not envision that life for himself. But through this story, we can see that even when we lean into these difficult times, right, and we believe and we adapt, we lead, we allow ourselves to grow through the difficulties, we can find ourselves on a path that will be far more impactful, far bigger than what we could have imagined for ourselves. Thriving doesn't mean that we avoid difficulty. It doesn't mean you have a perfect life without any hardship. It's the opposite. It means that you're leaning into that difficulty. You're leaning into the hardship. You're using it as a stepping stone for something greater. Greatness doesn't come from an easy path, right? It is through these difficulties and that hardship that makes someone great, that allows us to achieve and accomplish such big things. Stepping into the unknown and rising up in the face of fear and doubt and uncertainty. Sometimes we have to do these things because our backs are against the wall. We don't have a lot of choice. But a lot of times we endure hardship because we know there's something greater on the other side, right? We show up because our current situation, our current condition doesn't match what we feel has been placed inside of us and what we feel like we're capable of. We keep getting back up every time we're knocked down because we believe in our causes. We keep pushing forward because we believe we were put here to be the heads and not the tail, right? You have purpose in this life. And it's through the hardship that you go through. It is through the pressure that you are placed under. It's through the fires that you are put through that you're being purified, that you're being strengthened, That you're being prepared to step into your Freetown. You're being prepared to step into your Sierra Leone. When we put courage over comfort, when we stay open, when we master our failures, when we communicate for impact, and when we lean on community. When we do these things, our life's path will reveal itself. And that path is not always going to be easy, but trust the process. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right.